Namaste. I'm Shweta Seni, CEO of Arcus Policy Research, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to the second episode of our podcast series, Samavesh at Arcus. In our first episode, we shared the journey of Arcus over the past 4 years, reflecting on the research we've undertaken, the kind of questions we've explored, and the enriching interactions we've had. As we move into this episode, we at Arcus understand that while our research enables us to uncover important pieces of policy puzzle, wisdom and a deeper wisdom only emerges when multiple perspectives come together. Samavesh is our effort to create that platform or a space for bringing experts from diverse fields, help us examine complex issues, connect scattered insights, and think more holistically around India's agricultural policy landscape. In this episode, we continue that journey of dialogue and discovery, learning from our guest, Mr. Pravesh Sharma, who is a seasoned bureaucrat, an entrepreneur, and if I may call him as a serial entrepreneur, and today is a chairperson of Samunati Foundation. He is one of my close mentors who intrigues me by his depth knowledge of not just the policy circles, but also what is happening in the field. We take pleasure in welcoming you, sir, today.
Thank you.
And the conversation today will be on Indian agricultural markets. So there are some facts that we've learned over time, there are some myths that we'd like to talk about, and some vision of where you see the markets are going. So, sir, first thing that I often as a researcher also ask is that just a few years back, a few decades back, when we looked at an Indian farmer, a typical image was a ragged farmer who was not informed about markets, who did not have access to credit, and who possibly did not know where to sell, and therefore there was a lot of distress selling happening of the crops or the produce that he did. We recently concluded a study of UP, Bihar and Odisha, and we found that at least 75% of the farmers, including small and marginal, had access to a smartphone. They had access to credit, institutional credit, and much of extension services were getting bettered. We even found that many small and marginal farmers were holding back their produce to time it for the market. Of course, that's a different reason that this timing may not have yielded, but then much has changed in the image of a typical average Indian farmer. What do you think, sir?
So that's completely correct, but I think the image of that poor ragged farmer is perhaps something like 60, 70 years ago. And certainly we can say since the 1980s, we have a very, I would say, highly sophisticated production and marketing system in this country. I think it's well known to a person of your depth of understanding of the sector that the entire green revolution ecosystem that was created, from state-of-the-art research labs to an extension system that took that knowledge to the field, to the farmer, the entire infrastructure of credit, of inputs, of price signaling, of procurement and distribution of the surpluses. So I regard the food security architecture that this country developed as one of the greatest achievements after independence. And I have no hesitation in saying that this is something which in fact the world did not expect India to achieve. I also like to remind younger colleagues today that this is the only area where we bested China much before China achieved food security. Of course they did, but at huge human cost, at huge environmental cost. India did it in a democratic framework, in a very orderly and planned manner. And I regard that as the best example of cooperative federalism, because a lot of the heavy lifting was done by the government of India, but with close involvement of the state governments right up to the field. So again, whatever you have described as today every farmer understanding what crop he should grow, where to sell it, when to sell it, having access to capital for production, having access to the right technology and to markets. This, I would say, is the fruit of that food security architecture that was developed.
Wonderful. So, if I were to now build on this, do you think that Indian farmer today suffers on certain accounts, and that could be on account of, say, climate change, on account of, say, policy ad hocness, if I may say. So, sir, we did this study with the OECD back in my days at ICRIER, where we found that most and across 19 commodities, which covered about 70% of our agriculture produce, for 20 years, we found that constantly Indian farmers were net taxed. Now, my question to you is that in this evolution, is farmer really supported today, or has farmer been net taxed? What kind of threats are you foreseeing that a farmer of today, because of course there's a technology access that he has, there are new techniques coming to his doorstep, but he continues to be vulnerable to certain threats. According to us, it could be climate, it could be wild animals because of certain other policies, or it just could be the threat because of the ad hocness in certain government policies.
So you put a lot of things, in the mix, and honestly, there is no yes or no or black or white answer to your question. I would submit to you that we need to look at the whole agriculture system not as a monolith, but as a sum of many moving parts. What you are describing perhaps applies to some segments of farmers who are into commodity production, right? But it is also true that today, something like 2/3 of our agriculture is outside the commodity space.
Yes.
And those are the fastest growing sectors.
Yes.
Fisheries, we have just seen 8% plus growth over the last 4-5 years. Horticulture, 6%. Dairy itself is now the biggest segment of the agri-GDP. By some estimates, 40% of the agri-GDP value is only dairy products. There is livestock. So I don't think that you could say that these are sectors where because of policy or because of market deficit or policy constraints, farmers are suffering. In fact, I would say that the diversification that we've seen in Indian agriculture is our farmer picking up signals from the market. Because let's face it, that as India has progressed, there was a piece I read yesterday that since 1991, India's per capita income has grown by almost 5 times. That means that people have more to buy in terms of their food basket beyond the cereals. And that's typically been in the high value agriculture segments. More fruits and vegetables are consumed, more eggs are consumed, more poultry, meat, fisheries, right? So who told the farmer that you better start keeping a few cows or better start having a backyard poultry? He read the market signals. And I always say that the farmer is the most incredible entrepreneur on this planet. And not just in India, the world over. The FAO says agriculture is a production activity without a roof. It's a factory without a roof.
True. Your
wonderful crop this evening could be destroyed overnight by hailstorm or winds or rain. So I would take maybe 2 or 3 aspects of what you said. Yes, perhaps for food security reasons, we've had a certain restriction on the free export of certain commodities. But please look around you in the world, and you are a distinguished researcher with lots of international exposure. Tell me which country in the world does not look at its food security from a strategic perspective.
Absolutely.
Look at a country like the USA, where only 1% of the population is into agriculture. Why does the USA want to have its own corn, its own wheat, and not import from anybody? Why does China try to do the same? Why is this trade war between China and the USA all about soybean and corn? So food cannot be compared to an industrial product or a service product. Food will always remain a strategic product, and every country will seek to secure its food supplies. All the G7 countries are cereal secure. Why is it? Why do they need to produce so much wheat? Why don't they import it from countries like India or Australia or other countries? It's because they realize that food production, once lost, is very difficult to recreate, and that's a vulnerability. See, you can live with lower technology maybe in your defense, in your cars. After all, for many years we had just 2 brands of cars. But it's not that life did not go on. Yes, it's wonderful that we have more choice, we have modern technology. But we could not have lived without food. So during the time when we had only 2 major brands of cars, we were food secure. And we did not want to be dependent. And of course, a country of India's size with 140 crore people and going to be the most populous country in the world, at our peak, we'll touch around 170 crores. Fortunately, I'll not be around. This will be sometime in the 2060s. But can you imagine a country of that size going to the world market to buy its food?
100%.
It will be a huge strategic challenge. So we must preserve agriculture. Of course, you're right that there are challenges. Of course, there are some constraints and they can be ironed out. But I would say at a macro level, because we are forced to look at the picture as a whole, at a macro level, I think, I again reiterate, it's one of our greatest successes. And we need to understand and recognize that and preserve that success for the next generation.
Beautiful, absolutely. I mean, I have so many things. So I'm going to ask 2 follow-on questions, sir. And first is on paddy. So as we observe it, we are at 150 million tons. We export annually about 5 million tons of basmati and remainder about 20 million tons of other rice. Of course, there are policies which has been driving up rice production in the country, which begins by every political election combined with an announcement of bonus, and that diverts acreages from other crops to paddy. And because there is a large production, FCI is forced to buy it. And because FCI has large stocks of rice, it doesn't know where to offload it. Much of that, even to the tune of 5 million tons, is targeted to be diverted towards distilleries for producing ethanol for fuel purposes. So my thing is, of course, we've come a long way, but are we overstretching the market? Where do we stop? Say, in wheat, for example, we continue to be in that non-tradable zone where every 3rd or 4th year we see there is a problem. But in terms of rice, for example, or sugarcane, we see some structural surpluses being created. And of course, maize is another story that unfolds every day, but we see a lot of, very ironically, a consolidation happening in the production basket because of market signals, which may not be what a country requires at that point.
So, of course, I'm not an expert to, say what is the country's right level of rice production or paddy production.
But should a country have that estimate of what is the opportune or a right level?
Of course, a country should have that estimate.
Yes.
And I would go a step, back further and say that perhaps what India needs is a overall land use policy for agriculture, right? As you rightly were hinting, there are certain crops that we are importing. I mean, oil seeds and oil exports have crossed all-time highs.
100%.
Pulses are another deficit area.
Absolutely.
But why is it that farmers are not going to those crops? It's because the system of support that we created for paddy, we have failed to do so for these 2 crops.
100%, sir.
If farmers were to be supported, what will a farmer look at? They look at returns per hectare.
Yes, sir.
In terms of money, in terms of income. Today, paddy offers much better returns per hectare than oilseeds or pulses.
Absolutely.
Let's change that mix. As a strategic decision, just as we, got wasteland converted to, parts of Haryana and Punjab were undeveloped, right? Before the Green Revolution.
Yes, sir.
The government as a conscious decision went in for land consolidation, land leveling was undertaken. Most of it was uncultivable for paddy.
Yes, sir.
And paddy was a crop not eaten by the local population. But it was the most appropriate place to grow paddy so that we could feed the deficit in the south, where the population was largely rice eating. So even today, Punjab and Haryana farmers are growing, producing parboiled rice, which is mostly going to the south. That's the beauty of having one integrated market and one country. So I'm all for a comprehensive land use policy, which of course will not happen overnight. You can then move towards that target in 5 years and 10 years and have the optimal mix. Perhaps the paddy area needs to be shifted. Perhaps some of it needs to be converted. I'm not either an agricultural expert or an economist, but I'm certainly aware that yes, there are some imbalances. and I would regard the deficit in protein as a much bigger challenge than the excess in paddy.
You're right, sir.
After all, we still have a major nutritional challenge in this country.
100%.
The unacceptably high level of children are undernourished, underweight,
Yes, sir.
stunted. Even if it's come down significantly in the last few decades, but it's still there.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we need more creative policies which integrate production and distribution and nutrition and other feeding programs
Yes.
plugged into this.
100%.
So I'm sure we can achieve that balance. But I think what I'm wary of is this knee-jerk reaction saying, okay, 1 year there's a surplus, so let's now push back. Because in agriculture, you cannot see change in cropping patterns happening season to season. These incentives or disincentives will take some time playing out.
Yeah, I agree, sir. I mean, and it just brings me to 3 examples I thought I'll bring forth before asking the next question. So we were in Chhattisgarh a year back, and I've been giving this example way too many times, I think. But then we talked with farmers, little remote to Raipur, and what they said was that they produce paddy 12 months a year, where they had chana grown before, and now they've leveled the land, and therefore they produce paddy throughout the year, and they sell that paddy to the PDS system, buy it back, and then that's how it is running, because they're essentially paddy eating. So that's one aspect of a market. The other aspect happened when we went to a poultry farm in Hisar, where we were talking with a very small, very marginal farmer, and we were talking about how did he come up with a poultry farm and how was it flourishing, and he happened to talk everything good about it. And then we talked to the aggregator as to what is it that's happened that's really gotten the entire village to start producing towards poultry. I said, what did the government do? And he said that the government only did one thing, that it did not do anything. They just let us be. So on one side, there is an example where the government has driven a behavior that may not be required, and on the other, the government's not participated at all, and therefore the markets have come up. And then there is a cusp example, sir. So all of this, what I'm trying to take your view on is how, I mean, from when I read about your work also, sir, you think that agricultural markets should be administered. And where my question is leading to is, what level of administration and why? And why should an APMC be a final resolve to a question where we were discussing what the future of agriculture markets would be, where we know that 3/4 of the output is outside of cereals and may not really require an APMC as the solution of markets? I mean, my question really is, what is the future of agricultural markets in terms of administrative controls or eases? Is it a state level answer? Is it a commodity specific example? Or is it a geographic lens? A South India has to be treated differently than a Northeast or others? Sir.
So each of your questions is about 6 questions in one.
I'm so sorry.
But, I would say, number one, let's get the factual clarity here. APMCs are not dealing with all these things like poultry or
They don't,
livestock
sir.
or
They don't,
dairy, right? It's not in their mandate.
100%,
So it's
sir.
unfair to blame them for, anything which is happening or not happening in these sectors.
But they don't have a market at all.
No.
I mean, they are
not
wet
that they don't
markets
have a
which are
market.
scattered. I mean, it's not like a structured
So
system.
let's
sir.
say that the way supply chains have developed in some of these high value segments is different from the way they have developed in the commodities space, and even to some extent in the vegetable and fruit space. And that the answer lies actually in the nature of the commodity, right?
Sir.
Something like milk, which is produced in a highly decentralized form, can be aggregated because it's a homogeneous commodity, right?
Right.
You can pool all the milk in a village, in a block, in a district, at a national level, it still is milk.
Yes, sir.
But you can't do the same to wheat or paddy because there are varietal differences, there are grades, right?
Sir.
Same with fruits and vegetables. So these are physical non-homogeneous commodities. They are non-standardized. They are not amenable to homogenization. So that's one of the reasons. Even in eggs, there are markets depending on size, on quality, There are grades of eggs.
Yes, sir.
There are markets, but there are unregulated markets. What the point I'm trying to make is, I don't think it is anybody's case that any market in the world for anything requires no regulation. Then why have regulation in the financial markets?
Yes, sir.
Or the stock markets? Or the labor markets? Let's give up all regulation. No, regulation is not meant to curtail an activity. Regulation is simply meant to make it a little more orderly and to make sure that it is balanced. It treats all the players in a balanced way.
Yeah.
Today we can certainly say that without regulation, markets are very imbalanced. Please go to a state called Bihar,
Yes, sir.
which in 2006 decided to abolish the APMCs. And let anybody come back and say, this is the ideal agriculture marketing scenario. It is not.
Yeah.
It is very chaotic. Farmers are sufferers, small traders are sufferers. Maybe some people derive benefits, but those are not the desirable benefits. So I would say that let's not mix up poor governance in some systems with the principle of regulation. Let's accept that regulation is necessary, can be very beneficial. I can give you the example of India's stock markets.
Right.
When I was growing up in Delhi itself, Delhi had a stock exchange, and as a child, it was on the way back from school, we would, peer through the glass at the Delhi Stock Exchange and see people shouting various trades. There were physical auctions. Many of them were supposed to be rigged. It was openly said that this is a fixed or a rigged market. But when India decided that no, capital markets need to have transparent regulation if they are to enable companies, shareholders, investors to benefit from flows of capital, we cleaned up our act. We today have world-class regulation of our markets. So billions of dollars of global capital has come to our market. I use this as an example to illustrate the point that the fact that some agricultural markets are not properly regulated is not, I would say, destroying the principle of regulation.
True.
Of course, we need to see what's happening in a particular place and fix it. But I would say across all commodities, there should be norms, there should be transparent quality setting, there should be transparent price discovery so that both producers and buyers get an equally fair deal.
So what is holding back from that happening today? I mean, we've had series of reforms, we've had farm laws come and go, we've had a lot of private sector money coming in, there is a lot of philanthropy money coming in to create platforms where farmers can be connected. But we still feel the access to market options, marketing options are limited for a farmer, wherein we anticipate a vibrant private markets to also come up as an APMC would be there. And you're absolutely correct. We have to look at apple market differently than a soybean market or a cotton market. But what is holding back the vibrancy in the agri markets?
So I would say that there's a priori assumption in your question that agriculture markets are not vibrant, the current ones.
I mean, I compare it to what it could be if there were multiple options and farmers did not have to do.
Such as?
So, for example, in soybean. So, we've been tracking soybean for a long time, and what we studied in the last 2 years, earlier we had cheaper palm oil to be blamed why our soybean wasn't coming up. And then later there was the debate about DDGS from maize ethanol production, because of which the maize farmers did not get the price. But all that was happening was that we continued to import soybean with a landed price greater than what it was had the locally sourced poorer soybean been bought and processed locally. I mean, we feel that there are clear market signals and still the farmer is not able to realize the potential of its produce. I mean, because he goes to the APMC mandi or the traders come and buy. So we see that there are certain fundamentals of supply and demand, basic economics rule not playing out. And that just tells us there is something about the market, about openness or the information arbitrage that flows in, that restricts the reality in terms of price discovery.
So I would disagree with you there,
Sir.
because in a sense you are also arguing against your own position. You are right when you say that the price of a commodity in a local market, let's say a mandi, in a soybean producing district in Madhya Pradesh, it's not decided by the closed loop of the buyers and sellers in that market.
It shouldn't be.
It is not.
Yeah. Yes.
They are all being governed by much bigger forces. Those traders are aware that the country has put either a lower duty on imported crude oil, and it is not viable now for local processors to buy that soybean at a particular price and compete with that landed imported soybean, palm oil or any other crude edible oil.
Yes, sir.
That's not done by the local market APMC or the traders. They are simply the people playing out that drama.
Absolutely.
Right? Similarly, the fact that storage limits are imposed by the government suddenly, it's not the fault of the traders or the farmers.
100%, sir.
But the end result of that is that traders will lower their quotes, because now they can hold lower stocks, and they must first evacuate old stocks before they can buy some more. And therefore, if the buying goes down, the price will also go down.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just trying to point out to you that you are blaming the wrong, victim here. The mandis are the victim. The markets, which includes the traders and the farmers, they are the victims of the unwitting victims of policy. They are not in. Every year, you are aware, this has been happening for the last 6-7 years. The government imposes a ban on the export of onion, right? Suddenly, overnight, the onion trades in those mandis in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, the prices crash. Who's to blame? The person or the entity which set the policy, or those people there?
Yeah.
So I would say that this has become, I'm sorry to say, a bit fashionable to beat up the market, especially the APMC, because it's a visible platform.
Yeah.
I think that the APMC is a great solution to our highly fragmented production system. Look, the bulk of Indian farmers are small and marginal.
Yes, sir.
Individually, they do not produce the kind of surpluses that an ITC or a Cargill can go into a village and say, okay, give me 10 truckloads of anything, cereal, paddy, oil seeds, because it is simply not there. The genius of the APMC is that it allows very small producers even to bring 2 bags or 5 bags and find a market.
Yes, sir.
Then somebody at a trader level will aggregate it, standardize it. That's when an ITC or a Cargill will get interested. So let's not blame the wrong entity here.
No, I agree, sir. I mean, what I was probably hinting to was, ceteris paribus, when policies didn't change, were the prices discovered in its true manner?
Absolutely.
So there too, we
Absolutely.
did see. So we have seen evidences of everything else constant, maize prices falling for this year. But that's also, but I can...
Supply and demand.
So, I mean, it has to be a transparent manner of price discovery. And somewhere we feel that even when market fundamentals, and this actually was, I mean, I would love to debate on this, but I will want your views on a solution that you yourself helped to create in terms of FPOs.
No, we are happy to debate that.
Sir.
May I just simply say here that
Sir.
a lot of these are now bandied about as conventional wisdom.
Sir.
A lot of this conventional wisdom is actually just opinions. And I'm fine. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion,
Sir.
but not their own facts. So I'm
agree,
saying
sir.
let's establish the facts first
Sir.
and agree on the facts.
Sir.
Then you can have your opinion, I'll have mine.
Sir.
My bias is towards the mandi system because I can see from 40 years of work experience
Yes, sir.
that it has benefited people.
Yes, sir.
It has enabled a guy who comes on a belgadi with 4 bags of grain
Yes,
to
sir.
find a market for that grain.
100%.
And is not obliged to sell it to somebody in the village who was offering him maybe 20 rupees
No,
per
I
quintal less.
completely concur, sir. Because,
However, just to complete my point, I also agree that a lot can be done to maybe professionalize, make them more transparent, bring in the role of technology for quality assaying, for storage. I mean, those are things that policy could enable. But why is policy not enabling them? It's a question to ask a policymaker. I'm no more a policymaker. I'm just an small ex-civil servant. Better deals from credit markets, input markets, output markets, technology service providers. And it's happening in a number of cases.
Absolutely.
Is there a complete, success through the sector? Of course not. But where is it, may I ask you? Are all the steel companies thriving?
No.
Are all the banks thriving? Are all the NBFCs thriving? So it's a mixed bag. And as for the reasons that you're saying, I'm sure all the reasons that you pointed are reasons for a particular entity not doing well. Could be leadership, could be management related, infrastructure related, capital related. My own personal view is, since I've continued to work with FPOs even after leaving the government in the startups that I promoted, the lack of access to timely capital is the key, and in my view, something like half the reason for the challenges that every FPO faces.
Brilliant.
People, entities that got quick access to capital could roll them and start doing something. Wherever they were starved of capital for long periods because of either inaction of the promoting agency or the disinterest of the local banks or NBFCs or other players, that's where people have, sort of fallen away, members have drifted away, and that would happen to any. Look, I took a figure from the ROC portal a couple of months ago. In the last year alone, 25 lakh companies were closed down.
Wow.
That's okay. There should be churn in a
100%.
capitalist system. From the 50,000 FPOs, maybe there were 5,000 FPOs also which shut down. But I don't think that's the end of the world.
True, sir.
Right? Like any enterprise, they'll face challenges. If they can't survive, they'll fall apart. But newer ones will come to take their place. So I'm not suggesting that either it's the answer to everything, but I'm saying that there is a space. And if we want to see value accruing to our farmers, especially small farmers, they will have to have some institutional solution. Individual farmers cannot access the market on the same terms as a group of 500 or 1,000 farmers can. And that's the logic of the FPO. As long as we continue to have those small producers, they continue to remain dependent on agriculture, I think the FPO is going to remain around as much as anybody likes it or not likes it.
Brilliant. Very nice. So this is one bit of the story of market intelligence, where farmers need that information. Now there's this other side of the table, where the policy makers, ones who are designing the policies that affect everyday farmer and consumer, should have an internalized system of market intelligence discovery. So do you think, given that you've been a policymaker yourself, that do policymakers invest in strategically for gathering credible, timely market intelligence, or is it like that when the market reacts, does the system of collecting market intelligence begin? And whatever is, what should be, is the thing.
No, of course, there is a very sophisticated system of price tracking in the government,
So,
especially consumer prices, wholesale prices. That's part of the.
that's today and past. But what about the future prices? Because are they collecting future prices?
But what is a future price? Nobody knows a future price. There's no system which predicts future prices.
If we go to a trader who's been working in, say, commodities which have a relatively longer shelf life, like pulses, they know the market a year in advance. Like, for example, so we're like very naive learners here, but in case of potato, what we learned was that every year, March or April prices and cold storage levels in Agra will determine what the potato prices will be throughout the year. I mean, it's just a very, very naive example, sir, but then there are signals that can be tabbed to create a knowledge that can help you bring some
government, of course, does track things like onion stocks or potato stocks.
Sir.
Of course it does, as also prices, because these are very sensitive prices and they do impact the consumer food basket, and therefore they also impact inflation. And both RBI and the government, they track inflation very closely. I'm not aware that there is any,
market
properly
intelligence
vetted system which can actually predict future prices. If there were,
I mean, even signals, it may not be price itself.
Well, I'm sure that the signals are certainly studied and picked up, but that, and that's why sometimes you see that the government banned the export of onion or potato, right? Because obviously some anticipated shortage and
Or
price
when
spike.
that happens, they ban it, sir. I mean, it's not as if, but you're right, sir.
Sometimes it is also done in advance. Like say there has been a crop failure. The ban is announced in advance because you know that you're not going to get, there have been excess rains as happened recently. And it was anticipated that prices of certain commodities would go up. So but I don't know if that itself is a, how does it help a farmer, for example, to take a sowing decision? How does it help a trader take a stocking decision? How does it help a consumer? I mean, you can't hoard onions or potato in your house,
yes, sir.
right? You will, obviously have to respond to market. Maybe you adjust by reducing your consumption. You adjust by shifting to alternate. Maybe in the case of onion, increasingly the organized caterers or hotels shift to dehydrated. That's also, so
I agree, sir.
There'll be solutions which will emerge.
So, sir, while I completely concur, I just feel that if there were certain rules, and I'm being a very researcher mindset to it, if there were certain rules of when the government will enter or will not enter. So for example, there was one of the caveats in the farm laws that said if the prices have moved 50% above or below the previous year's price or an average of previous years, then we'd anticipate a market action. So what I'm saying is it may not influence that year's sowing pattern, but it does influence the kind of predictability all the players in the value chain is able to build on, because that helps them to know if a commodity, like for storages and pulses or now processing capacities of maize, to know that ethanol may not be imported in future, to know that this demand is there to stay, helps stabilize the value chains. So to that extent, the signaling is really important, sir, as much of course as implementation. So there I feel that market intelligence should be institutionalized, though we see that DOCA, for example, has taken repeated very quick decisions on commodities like pulses and even onions and tomatoes now, for example. So that agility is building up, but how we wish as researchers that it's more institutionalized, spread across. But
so yes. I don't know whether it's possible actually to put it all in the shape of a system, because agriculture being such a climate and weather dependent activity, I don't know if all the variables can be factored into in advance.
Sir. 100%, sir.
There could be late rains, there could be early heat, whatever.
That's there.
None of that could be predicted.
But that's there even for stock markets and others too.
No, the stock market is not affected by heat or rains.
Or it could be affected by factors which are grey swans or black swans.
So therefore there is so much fluctuation.
True, sir.
After all, the stock market is classic for unexpected peaks or unexpected drops.
True, sir.
I would say that agriculture markets, if you compare them, are actually less choppy and they show a greater stability, at least in the medium term.
And there is a predictability, sir.
Absolutely.
If we do time series as researchers, we know certain patterns, like in rainfalls, like in yields. But what an intriguing, I know we've shot over time. Before I wind up, I will, the way we're visualizing this Samavesh series is, sir, we're looking at the future of where agri-markets would be. And if that is on mind, can you just pinpoint one most important reform that you believe has to be undertaken today for us to ready for say 2047 or even say 2037? And why we're saying 2037 is, sir, we're actually thinking till 2047 we'll have 10 years of revisit on where the actual performance is, and therefore much of the research at Arcus is now focusing on 2037. But your requirement of the most cardinal reform that has to be done today for that time.
So on that I'll have to then say that I don't know what that one reform is, because I don't think there is a magic bullet or silver bullet here which can change everything.
No, it could be that first most important.
I would still push back and say that it has to be a package. It cannot be one.
Done, sir.
There has to be a package, and that package will include, things like, better infrastructure for me, better integration of, commodity arrivals with pledge financing and storage, better quality assaying, because all these working in tandem and in, coherence would yield a better return to the producer and deliver better quality and predictable prices to the consumer. There is no one thing just taken out of this package and done which will make a difference. It will not. It will not. I would like to see more lot-based trading. So the farmers only bring a sample and not the entire trolley full at first go.
Wonderful.
I would like to see more storage near the village in common silos or warehouses where the stock is first delivered without any need for the farmer to sell it. And then, he can sell it in installments linked to pledge finance. So it's an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Just like we built a production ecosystem, and of course we have a marketing ecosystem, I think there needs to be today a greater focus on the various components of the marketing ecosystem so that we can deliver the collective value both to producers and to consumers that I think our system deserves.
How beautiful, wonderful. So much of your recommendations and requirements of the changes are in the marketing segment of it, and I see, and makes sense where we are probably moving to a point where some surpluses are beginning to emerge as structural. We are moving fast on tech and techniques. So it's so wonderful. I mean, I can continue to discuss with you, sir, but given the time, we just so glad that you took this time out, and how I wish that we have a follow-on discussion soon again, and we take up this conversation further on FPOs, for example. And so thank you very much.
I look forward to that, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for listening.